Welcome, everyone, to another episode of HR and Payroll 2.0. I'm Pete Tiliakis, and as always, I'm joined by the legendary Julie Fernandez. Welcome, Julie.
Thanks. Good to see you again, and I'm excited that you brought a friend today.
Yes. We are very happy, or very, very lucky, I should say, and happy to have a special guest today for this episode. He is the founder of BentoHR, the host and creator of Thinking Inside the Box podcast, a show that features thought leaders talking about the complex issues related to work and culture in the workplace, a longtime practitioner, a thought leader, an expert in human capital management space, just all around. So please welcome Matt Burns.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, welcome, Matt. So for those that don't know you, I know that probably didn't even scratch the surface of your world, but tell us a little bit about what you do and how we could connect with you as well.
I appreciate it.
Yeah,
I appreciate that. So I spent 20 years in the corporate world. 15 of those were in HR. The last 5 as an HR executive. Did a lot of work with digital transformations, M&A work, corporate restructurings. Then went out on my own, launched my own digital transformation consultancy, BentoHR. And along the way, found time for a podcast and a virtual reality conference and about 5 other things I can't talk about in the podcast today. But folks want to get a hold of me, you can find me at Matt in VR on LinkedIn. I basically live on that platform, and looking forward to today's chat.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. You know, it's interesting when you say 20 years. I know I've been 30 years. Julie, I'm sure you've been probably 30 as well. It's like I always think like when you look at those time frames, we're all going to be in therapy together, the same therapy. So
I thought this was our therapy, Pete.
Yeah. This could be. This could. Yeah. So Matt, as you're probably familiar, with the show, we talk about news up front. We kind of dig into what's going on in the marketplace. And then we jump into a topic of the week. And the topic of the week is actually something selfish. I went on a trip recently, and I want to talk about something that I saw there that has really made me spend a lot of time thinking about some of the troublesome things that HR is still battling with that it turns out they've been battling for over 100 years. So that really got me thinking a lot. And so I want to talk about that at the end here, but want to jump into some marketplace news, and really happy to have both of your perspectives today.
Yeah. Hey, Pete, I think you have quite a list. So why don't you just dive in and rattle this off?
Yeah. So real quick, last week or last episode, we talked about ChatGPT, generative AI, large language models, and the whole, sort of craze that's happened around that, the buzz. And we did a whole episode on that. So if you haven't checked that out, we'd love for you to do so. But what I thought was pretty interesting was, one of my peers, Madeline Lorano, who I respect greatly over at Aptitude Research, tweeted that there were, in the last few weeks since our podcast, right, there have been, I think, 6 major announcements, half dozen HR tech vendors in the space that have launched solutions that leverage ChatGPT. And those range, from various different, a lot of talent, to be honest with you, things like organizations like Beamery, Seek Out, Phenom, Eightfold have all put out some unique things. And EY, right? Ernst & Young has put out something in the payroll world, which is near and dear to my heart. I know yours too, Julie, that really leverages the ChatGPT capability in concert with the Microsoft Azure OpenAI enterprise, I guess you could say, solution, which, of course, EY, I believe, has built their platform, their global payroll platform on. So the chatbot is really going to be leveraged to enhance the employee satisfaction and first contact resolution as first use cases. But I think what you're seeing is that this stuff is making its way very quickly into the HCM space, and the end user is already getting to get their hands on it. So exciting stuff, and more to come, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I know we'll have many more conversations about some of these news flashes, because it's always, starts on the provider side with a lot of things being announced, and then the question is, does it really make its way to the practitioners and to the clients, or does it remain kind of in that vaporware, that nebulous cloud stage?
Yeah. Well, look, I think that all of these things, it's early stages, right? We talked about that on the podcast. There's a long way to go, but these are the first steps, right? Getting it integrated into interactions for things like, simple questions, right? That's the beauty of large language models. It can take massive sets of data. I think we talked about this on the podcast last time. When I was in consulting, right, at Deloitte, we had so much information we had access to, and much of it was probably on someone's laptop somewhere from some project. But finding all that and getting right down to that thing you needed was really hard, right, in the old knowledge-based ways. And now with these advanced AI, I think it's going to be just really impressive how quickly employees are going to get to answers and get on their way and become much more productive. So I'm
Yeah.
excited.
Hey, so let's stay on the roll. You mentioned EY. I think there's a little bit more to know there.
Yes. Yeah. You probably heard they were of the big four. I believe they were the only one that were looking to bifurcate, right, and split out their consulting from audit business. And that there's a lot of reasons why they would want to do that. I get it. But it turns out they've halted that. And I think the U.S. side of the business has put a crunch on that in terms of voting. But I understand they spent over $100 million pursuing that. And there's still money to be spent, I believe, budgeted for them to now go and sort of reorganize around this to address some challenges that they've been having. They've had a kind of a bumpy road over the last few years with some compliance issues in different places. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that. And I wonder if this will deter others from maybe taking the same approach. We'll see.
Well, far be it for me to chime in here, but naming a Project Everest from a change management perspective, I mean, the jokes just write themselves.
That's a great point. That's a great point.
I think it's an interesting concept. I mean, obviously the compliance issues facing EY, among others, when you look at their accounting business compared to their consulting business, I think it raises very real ethical questions. When companies are so big and the left hand's not talking to the right hand, what obligation do they have to their clients, to governments, to broader society? This is something I'll be watching in the coming weeks because I think it's going to affect all of us coming downstream.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great point. Branding is everything, right? You're absolutely right. It does kind of send a connotation of like an unclimbable mountain, right? So yeah, we'll see. Okay, the next one is, and this is no surprise, they've been talking about doing this for a while, and I think that of all the organizations out there, this might be one of the best to do it. Cornerstone has launched their opportunity marketplace. They've described it as, quote, the industry's first holistic career growth, mobility, and talent marketplace. And I think it's great, right? It's leveraging AI to unify skills, bring people and job role data across their talent solutions, which, as you know, go into things like performance management, learning, recruiting, all the areas of talent, and certainly help employees, find projects and learning paths and mentorships and opportunities that they might otherwise not have surfaced to them based on data and information. So I think this is a really cool thing. I know everyone's really building out their skills marketplaces and looking to boost this stuff. And I just love it. So what do you think, Matt? I know this is probably an area you spend some time in.
Well, I think any opportunity to democratize access to tools is key. I think, we can talk about this in the context of many technologies, but most practitioners I speak with are just absolutely confused with what's available on the market. It seems like every day something new is entering in, promising to save all the world's problems and make everything better. And the ability to have an aggregator like Cornerstone bring some of these things to their client group, I think is a win for that group.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I still think they're the king when it comes to learning, for sure. And the other areas that they have integrated with that are very robust. I've spent a lot of time with Cornerstone over the years myself. Used to be involved much more from my HCM technology research days. And I've had a lot of conversations with their customers. It's really interesting how much they do enjoy that platform. So, adding more modules all the time.
You know what strikes me about this, Pete, is that we're talking about they're pulling this together to connect employees to projects more from the employee's perspective, it feels like, than other tools and organizations that are approaching it, really less from the marketplace perspective and more from a performance and skills, internal skills and talent conversation.
Yes.
So it's like it feels outside in to me, right? It's just a flipped lens.
It does.
And I think that brings a lot of opportunity with it.
It does. Yeah, I would agree. I think this is the experience platform age that we're kind of living in. And you're right. I think the theme that you see in a lot of these solutions now is the empowerment of the employee to own their data and own their path. So 100% agree with that. Okay, a couple more here. We had Globalization Partners launched GP Meridian Suite. Technically, I would argue that there's not a lot here that's new. This is more of a rebundling of their services and a branding of their product. I'm going to have a deep dive with them here. I believe it's next week or the week after, and we'll get more clarity on this. But it really does bundle their services and tech together and give you options in order to solve your global workforce challenges. And they've got a number of different things planned that are coming on the way. So things like salary benchmarking, talent intelligence tools, fintech-enabled payments, right? That's becoming incredibly standard now. It almost feels like in most payroll solutions. And of course, more solutions to support various areas of HR. So global EOR is steaming right on ahead, and they're all getting more mature, hopefully. And many of the bigger ones like GP are starting to really sharpen their offerings and technology. So good to see.
Yeah, great segue into the next one in the space, right?
Yeah, one of the other things I think you're seeing across the global EOR space, probably in a lot of these younger emerging firms, as is in HR, is you're seeing a lot of the leadership teams start to wash out and change over from the original founding teams, and that's very normal, right? As firm, the executives that take you to one level of growth aren't always the executives that take you to the next level of growth. But in this case, Ben Wright, the founder and CEO, is going to move off to the chairman of the board role. And he has brought in a very tech-savvy industry veteran, Frank Calderoni, as the new CEO. So congratulations to both. And yeah, he's going to bring a very tech-forward look at what they're doing. And I would say, there's probably some potential for IPO here. I think there's been a lot of opining that there could be several of these firms, these bigger ones, right? The GPs, the Velocities, maybe even a Deal, and some other ones that are looking to potentially go IPO at some point. So we'll see what happens, right? There's a lot going on in this space. It's still incredibly crowded and incredibly hyper growth oriented, to be honest, at this point. So
wouldn't it be the first HR space where we have proliferation followed by consolidation? Right?
I think you're going to see that for sure. Yeah, the pre-IPO thing will probably happen, right? You'll get some people taken out before that, or firms get taken out. Not to mention, I've heard there's some really lofty revenue goals by some of these firms, and in order to make those, they're going to have to buy something. I don't see how they can do it otherwise. Yeah. And the other thing is too, as you know, Julie, look, the geographic capability is hard to develop over time. To have global capability takes time and investment.
I was going to say, stretch and thin. If your aim is to be global and cover the world, you're just not going to get there as easily as you might think.
Exactly. And I think that's what the consolidation would, an acquisition would certainly accelerate that and tap them into, new areas of capability that they might not be able to reach. So. Yeah, so good stuff. So congratulations to those guys. Maybe on some maybe bad news, I guess you could say, another ransomware attack. I hate to see this. It really does turn my stomach. It's an evil in the world I wish we could get rid of for all of us, consumers and businesses. But so this time SD Works has been hit. Sounds very similar to the UKG challenges, a year or more ago now. And so this is still kind of unfolding, but it sounds like they're investigating this a little bit further. And they're saying that they actually don't believe it was a ransomware attack. So I think we'll find out where the truth lies, I guess, at some point in their investigation. But my understanding was it was an impact only to their UK and Ireland footprint. The rest of Europe was unaffected, but I hate to see this, and I hope they get through this soon. And hopefully customers, and employees weren't too infected by it. At this point. So
everyone's knocking on wood right now because you never know where it will hit next.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I don't want to see it for anyone. It's no one deserves that. And in this space, that's why I think it's important to. I think a lot of firms, when they're buying solutions, might overlook some of that security element, and I think that's an area where you should look for your vendor to differentiate and demonstrate their expertise. These guys have a mammoth task to hold this data safe, and most of them do a fantastic job at it. And it's unfortunate occasionally things slip through, but it is the world we live in now. Okay, one last one before we go on, and Matt, I'd love to get your POV on this. I know you're an expert in this product area, but Ceridian has announced that Dayforce Wallet has passed 1 billion in earned wage access transaction, which is remarkable. Awesome. I've been involved with the Dayforce Wallet. I remember being in the room when it was mostly publicly announced, I guess, at the Ceridian annual client event several years ago. And I remember the recoil in the room from the group of leaders that were in there, the practitioners. I was one of them. Like, wait a minute, hold on. We can't just be firing off money all over the place without proper controls.
The pace of change in the world of business is fast, and that drives incredible complexity for the world of human resources.
Welcome to the HR Data Labs podcast, a series of conversations with experts inside and outside the world of HR on how to innovate, measure, and evolve our practices.
Our goal is to help provide you with practical examples of how HR has to change to meet the complexity of the business environment.
Every week, we'll talk to new and different voices on all aspects of HR.
And at times, we'll get irreverent.
Silly even.
And sometimes geek out on the data and technology that underlie the processes that drive the world of HR.
But the conversations are always insightful and fun. So please, enjoy the HR Data Labs podcast.
But this is fundamentally part of payroll now, right? The earned wage access is a tremendous flexibility enabler. It's a massive, from my research, it's almost arbitrary to payroll. It's almost helpful to payroll. And at the end of the day, it impacts so much more on the talent side, retention, recruiting, referrals, you name it, engagement. So many things go up on the other side of the spectrum that I think it really should be looked at more as a talent enabler and an engagement driver than a payroll solution. But it does need to be fundamentally native. It just needs to be standard to what you're doing. So kudos to Dayforce Wallet for innovating and leading in that area. Matt, any thoughts on this as well?
So many thoughts. I mean, back to my old days as CHRO in retail, if I had a tool like this at my disposal to help a workforce that is living paycheck to paycheck, and let's be honest, in 2023, last I checked, like 60% of United States adults are living paycheck to paycheck. It's no longer the domain of retail and hospitality and manufacturing. It's now across the board with inflationary pressures, among other things. The opportunity to give people access to earned wages, which I think is key. This is not an advance. It's earned wage access. And I think about, as I've reflected upon the solution itself, this might be filed under historical ways of doing business that, when we look back on them, may not make sense. Since the dawn of payroll, the majority of employees have essentially extended interest-free loans to their organizations. We get paid every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks, and the organization is collecting that money and then in some cases investing it or directing it to generate additional revenue and then paying employees on a payroll cycle. Well, with Wallet, people have access to earn wages in real time. I think it's a game changer for the industry, and I couldn't agree with you more, Pete. I see this much more as a talent enabling solution as opposed to a payroll solution. The reason it's in payroll, though, is because it's enabled by continuous calculations of pay and time, which allows this solution to be able to ensure that there's no need to do any reconciliation for the payroll manager. There's no overhead for the company or the employee, but simply they're just advancing interest to the employee based on controls put in place by the organization. I love this solution. I talk about it all the time on my podcast. I couldn't be more excited about the potential of it. I think you're going to see more and more of these solutions enter into the market.
Yeah, agreed. And I think Ceridian's definitely been a leader in this space. I mean, the continuous calculation capability, Dayforce Wallet, they've really been very, very forward on this. And so, 1 billion in transactions is impressive. And so kudos to them. And I love that. I love seeing what they're doing there. So,
Pete, I think there's another part of the story there too, and that is, well, we talk about it a lot domestically. Ceridian, part of getting to that billion has been expanding Wallet and putting it not only in the U.S. and Canada, but in the UK and ANZ, and kind of we're all watching to see what's next, right? So doing that and doing that globally are two different things. Even some of the really hefty names in the space that are tools or conduits to get to there may not have their act together globally, and so there's a little bit of a distinction that buyers should know about their when they're thinking about trying to put that into their organization.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was at Alight, I wrote an article about the fact that I think that there are still a lot of payroll practitioners and leaders who do not think this is a good idea. And I understand. I totally get it. And I think some of it is generational and some of it is that control mindset. That's what payroll's job is, compliance and control, right? Risk management, if you will. And I totally understand that. But what I think I'd love for more payroll managers to understand, in my opinion, is, and I think it's a fact, it's earned wage access is really a lever for the payroll organization to be able to solve problems for the workforce. And I think that is certainly financial wellness, but think about things like, if you've ever managed a footprint in California, right? Same day payments when you terminate someone it's a nightmare, especially when you're on the other side of the country. it's when you're looking at moments where, so for example, I remember researching one use case where a major retailer, a major grocer had been hit by the Texas snowstorms a couple of years ago, the ice storms or whatever it was, couldn't get their pay or whatever to the employees. They should be on direct deposit, but that's a different story. And they used their earned wage access provider to get money to those people instantly. And I thought those use cases are a lifesaver to the payroll practitioner who's out there trying to make it happen and make magic happen every week. So, you got to look at it for all the benefits that it brings, and not just kind of attack it from the controllership perspective, because it is counterintuitive if you want to be honest at first. So
and Pete, think about, for payroll managers, how many times they're approving off-cycle pay runs, cash advances. Like I get hives thinking about the amount of times I had to sign off on a pay advance to an employee that was going through a difficult time. And frankly, did we really need to understand the details of providing, paid access to people? In some cases, maybe, but in other cases, it's a very personal issue where an employee has to go to a payroll manager, explain why they need advances on their pay to earned wages. This provides a tool for payroll managers to do more valuable work and to essentially separate themselves from an administrative process that most of them that I talk to don't like doing anyway. So
exactly.
if we want to invest our time in more value-added activities, we have to stop doing some things. This to me is a no-brainer.
Yeah, I love it. And that you make a great point. I actually mentioned this in my article, that it's almost like a dignity thing, right? Like the ability for employees to solve financial wellness challenges without having to be, you're right, put their whole life on display and go and grovel for money. It's a much more dignified way for them to solve those challenges. So yeah, I love it, man. It's the out of the box thinking, or in your case, the in the box thinking that we need to have to move HR and the workforce forward. Okay. Anything else you guys want to add on those topics before we jump into our fun topic of the week?
No, a laundry list. This is the power of having an analyst in your back pocket podcast, right?
Yes. Thank you. So look, selfishly, this episode is a little bit about my what's been keeping me up at night. And I know that's a cliche thing, but ever since my trip to Asheville, I don't know if you've been to Asheville, North Carolina. Julie, have you been?
Only for work.
Okay. It's a beautiful town. Matt, I think we talked. You said you hadn't been either yet, right?
On the list.
Yeah. Okay. Go. You should go. It's a great place. Art, craft breweries, amazing food, just a beautiful town. It's a river town. It's a mountain town. I mean, it has everything you'd want for a great weekend. So my wife and I went. We had never been. We lived 3 hours away. We made the trip. And we were privileged to actually tour the Biltmore Mansion. Or the Biltmore House, as it's called. And it is not a house. It is a massive 175 square foot, 250 room mansion, the largest private home in the United States of America, right? To me, I'd say that's the closest thing we have to a royal palace here in America, if I may. And so what's amazing about this is, right, you're walking around, you're looking at this. I mean, it is, I mean, think about the Vanderbilts at the time, the family that built this. I mean, I believe they were the wealthiest family in America, potentially, if not maybe one of the wealthiest in the world. And they had an amazing vision for building this. The family member that did, and it's actually a incredibly excessive place, right? I mean, let's be honest. It's 175,000 square feet is ridiculous, right? And it was actually built by one of the Vanderbilts who was single at the time. That was kind of the joke they tell you on the tour, like, yeah, single guy living in this huge house. But he had this vision, right, for having this beautiful home, and it's amazing. It has everything you can imagine. And one of the things they talked about is like all the innovation that was inside of it, things that were just not available to regular people at the time. And one of the things that's really interesting to me, fascinating to me, was I had the opportunity to go into an area. I think it was actually kind of in the basement area, and they had this exhibit for the workforce. Well, naturally, I gravitated down there and started reading it. And I'm going to share some of my photos from the exhibit. But they had two elements of the workforce exhibit that really just drew me in. One was around innovation, and one was around the challenges that they were facing. And surprisingly, despite the fact that they had not only innovation in the home for comforts, they had innovation at their hands and at their disposal to build and construct the home, right? So they had capabilities and tools that other construction projects had not had. So by all means, they were a very innovative workplace, right? Let's just level set there. But what's interesting, there were three things that came out to me that I was shocked that they were dealing with as a workforce and as a project that we are all still dealing with today. And keep in mind that this project took, I think, 6 years, 5-6 years, completed at the end of 1895. So we're talking 128 years later. We're looking at the exact same issues, right? And let me maybe just hit those real quick. So the first one was productivity, right? Despite the fact that the first of the kind project required this massive workforce, right? They still had, despite having this leading edge technology and innovation that they were able to use at the time, right? Still had a need for this sizable workforce, right? So productivity was a real problem, right? The other issue they had was not enough skilled workers, not enough artisans. There were just not people available in the area that could do what they needed and wanted and aspired to do in this home. And so a lot of what they were doing was going abroad and bringing people back to the job site and employing them to be the artisans to make this stuff happen, right? So productivity and skills were a problem. And the third one, surprise, wellness, pay equity, and fundamental worker rights were a challenge. So I'm sitting here looking at these three things and I'm thinking, this is 2023. We're talking about these same exact issues today. How are we 120 years on and HR and the workforce are still in the same space that they were, tackling the same problems that they were 128 years ago? And that's where our discussion begins. I really want to open this up and I want to figure this out because in full candor, I started to write an article about this, and Julie will attest. I got a little, I feel as though I held back because I didn't publish it because I felt like I was coming off as though I was blaming HR. And while I think there are some self-inflicted ways in which HR has prevented some of these things from progressing, I also think that a lot of it has been out of their hands for many reasons. So that's where I want to get you guys to give me your thoughts, right? Let's kind of get this going and talk about what you think. I mean, are you shocked by this? Do you think this is HR's fault? I mean, what do you think?
So, Pete, I'm going to start by saying, I've had some time to think about it since looking at your initial, kind of your initial thoughts, which is just a great conversation starter. But I think, I think in those days, it might be fair to say that HR wasn't an established function at that time, right?
Yes.
So the first thing that I thought about was, how, this is a great point to make. How is it that, we're still, 120 years later thinking about the same stuff? But then I thought, I bet there wasn't, HR dealing with, the workforce that was trying to do what was happening in the build and all the construction. And so we weren't a function yet. Not a really well-established one. And so that, that might let us off the hook for a few years anyways.
Yeah. No, that's a perfect point though. You're right? There wasn't, we didn't have Workday and SuccessFactors out there helping fuel our workforces. We didn't have artificial intelligence and ChatGPT, but I don't even know if we had work. I don't even know if we had HR. Not much. Exactly.
That's when business was coming about. We might have had a payroll department somewhere, but was there really HR's function? Probably not. So we had maybe this was our inspiration 128 years ago.
Yeah. So Oh, I'm sorry. You meant, exactly. The department of HR and the concept.
Just didn't, business was just starting to come about and
that's a great point.
Starting to become a practice and a function. A back office didn't exist back then until now.
Yeah. Matt, what do you think? Where are you at on this?
This makes me sad.
Yes.
we haven't evolved, and
we've regressed on all of these.
Well, and I at the risk of getting my hackles up and defending HR, because I certainly have my own gripes about the profession and our stubbornness around embracing things like technology and data and innovation. Some of these things really are systemic and fall far outside of their purview.
True.
I look at organizations and how they're structured today. And if we deal exclusively with publicly traded companies in North America, for which I think the majority of your audience probably falls into that category, board members and C-suite executives have a sole fiduciary responsibility, and that is to enrich the shareholder. Period. Full stop. End of story. Talent, diversity, wellness do not come into play unless it achieves that stated outcome. Now, we could argue about whether that's appropriate or not, but the fact is, until the incentives are better aligned with more of a talent-centric mandate, we're going to continue to see discrepancies between what we actually think is in the best interest of our employees and organizations and what's actually happening in organizations themselves. So I think I look at yes, we can try and address the short term and the downstream symptoms of problems, but I look more upstream and go, what's starting all of this? And I look at the structure of businesses and say, that's a place to look at with a bit more of a fine-tooth comb, because this is what we've designed. Is this what we want?
Whether you're a payroll pro or an employee wanting to understand your paycheck better, we've got you covered. Tune into It's About Payroll for expert insights on payroll trends and compliance, or check out It's About Your Paycheck, the go-to podcast for employees looking to understand their pay and rights. 2 great shows, 2 great hosts. Listen now, brought to you by Work Defined, where payroll meets clarity.
What does it really take to lead with impact in today's ever-evolving world? Welcome to Inside the C-Suite, the podcast where influence, energy, innovation, and empathy converge. Hi, I'm Christy Honeycutt, your host. Join me as I sit down with the boldest voices in leadership, visionaries who are not just making decisions, but making a difference. In every episode, we explore the heart of leadership. How do high-performing leaders harness their energy? How do they lead with empathy without losing their edge? How do they turn disruption into innovation and pressure into purpose? You'll hear unfiltered stories of adversity, resilience, and the raw moments that shaped true influence. This isn't about perfection. It's about presence, passion, and the energetic exchange that fuels transformation. Inside the C-Suite is your invitation to lead from a deeper place, with intention, connection, and courage. If you're ready to go beyond the surface and unlock what really moves leaders to action, hit subscribe and step inside. You can find us wherever you get your podcast fix. Inside the C-Suite, well, we're an energetic exchange. Let's lead with influence, live with energy, and create with empathy.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's absolutely great point. Great point. And you're right. Like, look, I mean, fundamental human rights were really not where they needed to be at the time, right? I mean, human equality was just a problem in America, period. And I think that, let's be honest here, these guys were taking on, and gals maybe, were taking on Mission Impossible in some ways, right? This was never done before. Nothing like this had ever been done. So yeah, I think they were in a unique situation. And you're right, Julie, not a lot of HR and not a lot of information to be able to make good decisions. And hell, how do you get people in 1895 to come to come work for something? How do you even let them know it's happening? Right? I don't know. But yeah, just fascinating stuff here.
I still feel like I maybe have rosier glasses on in this space than my initial reaction, and I don't think it's defensiveness. I think there's a lot of things that feel like Groundhog Day, right, over the last 100 plus years. But I also think that we have to kind of look at it as, crawl, walk, run.
Yeah.
We've had iterations, and one of the things that I feel like HR has progressed in, and yet we just keep reliving it over and over again, is with each new wave of technical revolution, right?
Yeah.
We find ourselves chasing productivity, one of your key points, through, those advancements. And so maybe we still feel like we're, like now ChatGPT, right? Or other automations, like, will they get us where we're trying to be? And yet I can't help but think that we've gone through 4, 5, 6 generations of really formative and transformative technology changes. So, getting a technology at all, right? And a computer had to be birthed before we could get to office suites and make things usable, before we get to, ERP type systems and big hairy stuff, before we get to SaaS, right? And so I feel like, yeah, we're still chasing the productivity, but we really have evolved from having nothing.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
The 80s. It's just, we're just keep chasing the next shiny thing, and
yeah,
we have to keep up with the times, right?
Yeah, agreed. Do you you're on the front lines, right? Do you feel like, because I have said that I don't know, and I don't have research entirely to prove this, but anecdotally from all of my work, that I don't know that organizations are adopting the technology available fast enough. Do you think that's a true statement for the most part, or do you think people are trying?
I think that's a challenge, and I think we're trying. And part of it is, of course, just funding, and the business will always come first. Some of the back office stuff, so that's always been a challenge. But I also feel like this last the iteration before automation, the SaaS iteration, was groundbreaking in that people could leapfrog technology in ways that they hadn't. Like if you'd never gotten anywhere with an HR platform and HR system, you didn't have the baggage of big, heavy investments or the luxury of having started to automate things. In many cases, you were an advantage, right?
Yeah.
And so you could jump forward. So I feel like that kind of erased or blurred the lines on, maybe 100 of those 125 years, where if you hadn't made any progress or gotten anywhere, you could leapfrog into something that was, maybe you were in a better situation than anyone else in that spot. And so that to me was, from a practitioner perspective, just really, really awesome way to get caught up or to feel like you're getting caught up.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think, and maybe Matt, this is probably for you, maybe in your wheelhouse, but like, I think a sub driver of productivity is the challenge with engagement, right? I think that's what we're seeing today because the technology's there. I think what you're seeing today, right? I saw this morning, right? So for example, ADP research put out something recently. I want to say it was in the beginning of the year about how productivity is down for 3 straight quarters for the first time since the 80s, right? And today I saw, or yesterday it was, UKG put out something. They analyzed the shift uptake across their massive scheduling solutions. The fact that those are down, shift acceptance is actually down. So that means people are working less, right? Taking on less shifts. Do you think that? I think that's an engagement issue, right? I think there's a element of productivity that is being lost because of a lack of engagement and a lack of motivation to engage with what they're doing and be loyal. And it's not that people don't want to do a good job and don't want to work hard. I think there's just not a lot of motivators sometimes in certain workplaces.
Well, we're hitting a breaking point in a lot of places. Like, I think we've evolved, but like we haven't learned anything. I mean, we all bore witness to the forced migration of millions of employees to work from home during the pandemic, and call that an opportunity, call it a blessing, call it a curse. But the reality is we were all forced to work from home one day, and the day before we were all in the office. And the vast majority of organizations that I talked to realized solid financial results during the pandemic, despite the fact that people were not co-located. Except if you ask most organizations today, they can't get people to the offices fast enough. Now, in a time when we're trying to look at things like work-life balance or work-life integration, and employees are increasingly asking for more flexibility with which to be more agile with their time so they can get their job done, but also live their lives, organizations have now clapped back and said, no, it doesn't make sense, in spite of the data that points to the opposite. And as an HR practitioner, this gets me particularly upset because for years, and Julie, you know this story, for years I was told as an HR practitioner, well, Matt, your ideas are a moral-based argument. Show us the data. Then when we show them the data, they go, well, the data is not that. It's not relevant. It's not valid. It doesn't apply to us here. So it's like, when is it enough? Like, what signals do we need to show organizations to understand that you can only squeeze so much blood from a stone? We're putting more requirements on people. And this is not just an employment conversation, but the world has gotten more complex. People are overwhelmed. People are increasingly choosing to opt out of the workplace in different ways. Look at Generation Z. I mean, what incentive do they have to work 40 hours a week and put 30 years into an employer if they can't afford to buy a house? Like, the dream of, that we all grew up in, that we were all sold, is no longer a dream that's attainable for a large portion of our population. And the workplace is predicated on that system. That system is not working anymore. So I ask myself, if we got to this point, and let's be fair, we've realized incredible achievements over the last several generations that have gotten us to this point. Bravo. As we move forward, the world is changing. We have to look at this differently. And I think this is an opportunity for us to ask bigger questions about what actually makes sense and to use evidence-based approaches, use the data at our disposal to inform decisions as opposed to relying upon what we're most comfortable with. And I think as HR practitioners, we can be as guilty of this as the next. We revert back to what got us to this point. And I would just encourage people to ask themselves, what can we do that's different that makes sense against the current landscape.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I think that's the difference between, and I'm a big Simon Sinek fan, so I'll say this all the time. I think that's the difference between a fixed mindset and a very forward, agile mindset, right? A growth mindset. And that, you're right, listening to the data and not assuming that, oh, well, just ignoring it, right? It's telling you something, you should do something. I think we were talking about this offline, Matt, but like I've worked for a very famous Fortune 500 organization in my day. And one of the things they were incredibly known for is just the amazing brand and customer experience that they have. Everybody knows I'm talking about Disney, but one of the things that I think that they are incredibly good at as well is being very forward in helping and lifting up their employees. But they're the type of organization, like many, if you put something in front of them that is back office, it's less likely to get any attention as opposed to something that is going to face their customer and move the needle on customer and revenue, right? And I think a lot of firms fall into that, and they put off those investments in the back office. And it's not that they're not investing in their people. They're just not investing, I think, in the infrastructure to make them more productive, to make them more insightful and have a better experience and all of that, in favor of what's customer facing. But the conundrum or the crazy cycle there, egg before the chicken, I guess, is in order to get that great customer experience, you need that great employee experience. You need productive, engaged employees. And there's plenty of data that shows those things correlate. One leads to the other. Customer experience starts with your employee experience. And I think that it's counterintuitive sometimes for these big companies to go, oh, how am I going to throw down all this money on this cost center when I can go put it over here and I can get revenue out of my customer, or I can change my customer's experience for the better. And I think that's a trap that some maybe fall into. Little bit.
It's a huge trap, and it's a trap predicated on demographics that have massively shifted and will continue to shift. So let's be really honest. The employment model for most organizations has been quite exploitative. Employees have been interchangeable and replaceable. So if you found somebody in an organization that wasn't successful or wasn't able to meet the expectations, then you could move on from that individual and you could find other people to fill in that work. I'm taking a very broad stroke here and looking at this personally, but that a lot of organizations definitely have viewed talent in that way. If I can't find this person to work, I'll find somebody else.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? The world has shifted. And in most developed economies, the United States and Canada among them, the demographics are shifting such that there are more people leaving the workplace every single day than are joining it. Organizations no longer have the luxury of taking an exploitative view around their talent. They are incentivized now financially in ways they haven't been before to figure this out. And I think for the first time, the incentives are lining up such that we're going to see organizations awaken to the reality that they have to look at these problems differently, which has been something that we've been talking about, Julie and myself and yourself, Pete, for 20 and 30 years. We've been arguing for this from a moral perspective. Meanwhile, the economic landscape maybe wasn't in our favor. It's now starting to shift again. And my concern is for organizations that, again, use similar thinking to what we used 20 and 30 and 40 years ago, they're going to wake up one day and realize we can't fill vacancies and we can't automate fast enough. And we don't have the resources in place to ensure operational and business continuity. And
hey, this is William Tincup. Listen, we did a series for iSolved called Heroes of HR, where we talk to HR practitioners. And these are just your run-of-the-mill, everyday, slogging it out, 300 employees in Cedar Rapids, HR pros. Mostly it's centered around iSolved and what they do with iSolved, but also they talk a lot about kind of the day-to-day rigor of HR. If you're curious about that, search for Heroes of HR wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you.
That's just simply an avoidable problem when all the numbers seem to point in a different direction than they once did. I get really excited about the organizations that are innovating in this space, that are creating opportunities for employees to learn and grow. And we're not talking about a socialist state here. We're talking about treating people with respect as human beings. And it's something that we all would advocate for. I think that's the path forward, is creating workplaces that recognize people for the individuals that they are. And those companies can still make a lot of money and enrich their shareholders. But we just simply can't do so at the expense of people.
Yeah, agreed. I feel like the opportunity marketplace from Cornerstone could be helpful here. Bringing everybody to the paths that they're looking to go down, right? And elevating their desires and goals.
So I think there's a bit of
go
a
ahead, Julie.
built-in challenge. There's a bit of a built-in challenge here too, because
Yeah.
of the speed and the access to information that we have today. This is going to be
True.
a topic that everybody is bantering around. But when you think about such a dramatic change in how we engage with talent, or how we look at the workplace value proposition itself, real transformative change oftentimes comes from 10% of the population. It really doesn't usually come from the critical mass, right? And so since you brought up the Revolutionary War, just prior to that, I think I read somewhere that 10 to 15% of the population was actively engaged in that. Well, 80% plus were on the sidelines. And so here we have, I'm expecting that really meaningful change might come from a similar 10 to 15% that kind of figure it out. In the meantime, there's 80% of, everyone that's making noise about this, right?
Yeah.
And it just makes it harder and harder to see or to identify who is innovating in this space and what will the new model shake out to be.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. And then, just kind of going to the next topic here, right? The skilled worker thing. I think that was a bit of an anomaly here, right? You had this massive one of a kind thing beyond belief of anything that had been done before, beyond, opulent, beyond what anything had been opulent before, in this remote location, right? I think it was just a wild mix of strange opportunity that created this skills gap. And I think we will figure that out eventually in our world, right? It's going to take a full court press of, I think, government agencies and employers and employees and schools and universities all coming together. And there are nations that are better at this than others. I would point to Israel as a great example of how they're skilling their workers, or at least from what I've read. And so I think that the skills situation here in this case was very much an anomaly. And I think it will get better. And to Matt's point, I think it's going to take using data and making investments, and everyone. I think there's a lot we need to do from an education system perspective to fix this too. But I think this was a bit of an anomaly for this crowd. But what are your thoughts, Matt, on the whole skills element issue?
I love this conversation.
Yeah.
I don't come from a traditional career background, educational background. I, like a lot of folks, grew up through the ranks of a corporate setting and acquired experiences that ultimately inform my education, not the other way around. So I have a strong bias in terms of collecting experiential opportunities and applying them in your life. And I think about the opportunities that organizations have to afford their employees, to give them opportunities for stretch assignments, stretch goals, opportunities to be exposed to different projects. And I see a wealth of knowledge that's untapped in organizations if you pair the right people to the right kinds of opportunities. And I get really excited about that future. I think, in a lot of ways, our traditional institutions, education among them, has gotten us to this point, but no longer makes tons of sense. I mean, there's lots of good science that points to the fact that most adult learners do not learn through recitation and memorization and lectures and PowerPoints. But that seems to be the predominant model still offered by most contemporary and modern, air quotes, universities today. Whereas other tools that more deeply embed learning, like experiential opportunities, for example, are ubiquitous in the corporate setting. So I think I get really excited about this space, actually, because I think organizations here can take the lead on skills training, ultimately in their own best interest, but in the interest as well for their employees.
Yeah, agreed. For their survival, they've got to do this, right? They got to get these people ready to go and be able to handle their strategic goals. And I think that, it's interesting. We were talking about the fact that these artisans were being pulled from other countries in a lot of cases. I think back, I wonder if there was compliance and all that, right? It was no global EOR back then, but it's this is a challenge. And I think we've got to get our workforce right. GDP is slipping, at least in our country. We've got to get the productivity and the skills go hand in hand with making that happen. So last one here, and then we'll get wrapped up, right? Worker rights and wellness. We're still talking about this. And listen, I think a lot of this people first stuff is lip service by some of these companies because it's become popular to say that and trendy. Oh, you got to do that, right? You got to seem socially conscious. But it's pretty simple, right? Treat people fairly. Look at people for what they bring to the table, what value and skills they offer, how they contribute to the team, and how they can help you achieve your goals, and pay them fairly. I don't understand, and I believe it's very systemic, and I'm sure there's a lot of factors here. But why the heck can't we get this pay equity? And maybe certainly the wellness part of it, I think, can even be added up up to the two things we just talked to, right? Engagement and just the type of work we're asking people to do and the monotony of some of the things that they're still doing out there where technology hasn't been applied to it, or, the fact that people just aren't skilled for what the new work looks like. And this is going to become important with AI getting more proliferated. But how is it we can't get paying people fairly? That just seems like a no-brainer to me, right? Like, what is it going to take?
Well, I feel like we have a conundrum here, and that is, when you try to tackle these issues, you want to institutionalize things, right?
Yeah.
And so we've addressed things in HR over the course of many years, to create compensation bands and ranges, and to create structure, right, that will allow us or guide us in doing that. And anytime we come to a transformative phase like this, we're saying, look, it's not hard. Just do what's right. And then there's the other side of the house that says, well, but if you're just doing what's right, how do you know if you're doing what's fair? And
Yes.
then, you try to institutionalize things, and there's a dichotomy between those two things that really makes it, difficult for HR or for any company to try to figure out, what am I going to do what's right and to do what's fair? And how do I measure and balance those things? Is maybe harder than it seems, because they might not go in the same direction.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that. Matt, what do you think?
I actually have a lot of optimism on this particular segment. I think again, if we look at the incentives, organizations are incentivized to ensure productivity, which the ultimate form of productivity is availability.
Yes.
And we're entering into a world where we're a knowledge-based economy, and there's clear scientific links between intrinsic motivation, discretionary effort, and output. And organizations realized this during the pandemic by increasing the amount of services they provided in mental health and access to wellness services. But I think this is where HR can really take, if they hear this podcast and go, oh, that's really a lot of doomsday stuff, what do we do about this? This is an area where HR can actually influence this. And I think it starts with building the business case for wellness in your organization, tying it to traditional metrics like turnover and absenteeism, and making the case at that executive table to say, hey, investments, $1 here saves us $3 there. And it's an opportunity for us to put a moral wellness conversation into economic wrapping. Pete, here, I'm going to out myself for the world to understand. As a CHRO, I showed up at every board meeting talking about technology, data, and economics. And meanwhile, my Trojan horse was always employee wellness. But I knew if I led with that I wouldn't get laughed out of the room. So by starting talking about digital transformation and embedding wellness principles into the broader strategy, that's where we were able to move our engagement agenda forward. Meanwhile, the broader organization saw it as a lagging effect of technology innovation. So I think this is where HR can be more thoughtful about integrating all the disparate skills that we now have to apply as HR practitioners. We're all part-time psychologists and technologists and data scientists and economists and learning professionals and compensation professionals and so on and so forth, blending all these things together to make that strong business case for change. I think it's right there for us, and we all stand to benefit from it.
Yeah, agreed. So, Julie, you're again on the front lines. What's going on with wellness and just pay equity, right? Are employers really getting into this and trying to build initiatives around? I know wellness for sure, but pay equity. How do you see firms tackling this?
Yeah, certainly. So huge bunches of noise here. And as you know, Heron Palmer does a lot in the benefits and absence space. And a lot of the topics of wellness are, focused on what else can we offer, or how should we be addressing some of the things that employees want most or need most, which are related directly to time or to, health or to salary. And but what struck me when Matt was talking was, there's also a people lens to this. And that is, every one of us is a worker in our own right. And a part of trying to create this value also requires employees, us as employees, individuals, to try to actually articulate what is valuable to me. I mean, anybody that you're interacting with who works will say, well, more time off or more pay or more whatever. And so you're looking at a pick list that corporations are trying to offer or employers are trying to offer. As an employee, what do you even value? And do you recognize that, more time off or, might mean less pay? Is that an okay trade-off for you? Right. And I don't think that we're at the place right now where individuals really can articulate what that value proposition is for them. Instead, a lot of times we're responding to programs that are being put forth, or benefits that are being put forth, or, I want equal this or equal that. Well, you could argue that, but then can you still argue that you need extra time off, once a month when you aren't feeling so good, right? I mean, like there's these things are at odds with each other, and everybody values them differently. So that I think is the challenge.
Yeah. That's a great point. Well, look, I know we're getting kind of long here, but anything to add before we wrap up this discussion, and maybe just talk a little bit about where we're going to be next? Anything you guys have additional here? I always say this, but we could go on and on, I think, for sure. Anything else to add?
Not for me. I'll defer to Matt, because he's our special guest, and I've enjoyed getting to know him a little bit better and hear his perspectives. They're awesome.
I'm really excited. I think this is a really great opportunity for all of us, HR professionals, business professionals alike, to look at things differently than we once had. To Julie's earlier point, we have tools that we did not have to our disposal. I think back in my early days of HR, filing paper into filing cabinets and arguing over the benefits of digitizing anything, to now talking about, generative AI and virtual reality and machine learning. And I think what an incredible opportunity. And I would just encourage individuals to keep listening to podcasts like this, keep following people on LinkedIn, collect the knowledge from your community, and make more effective change in your organization. So I'm excited about the future.
Yeah, I love it. And thank you so much for coming on, man. We really appreciate this. This has been a great discussion. I've had fun. I appreciate you guys entertaining my silly thoughts around this craziness of 128 years of the same HR problems, right? So look, before we wrap up, as always, we want to give a quick update about where we'll be. So Matt, maybe you could go first. Like, where can folks? I know you talked about some of the ways to connect with you, but what's coming up for you on your agenda that we should highlight?
Oh, it's post-pandemic for me. I'm on trains, planes, and automobiles. I'll be in New York City, Atlanta, Boston, Charlotte. Just got back from 2 weeks in Europe, spent some wonderful time at the Lego HQ in Denmark. That was amazing.
Cool. Yeah.
Like there's just so much great stuff going on, and love talking to HR people about anything and anything culture. Find me on LinkedIn, Matt in VR. Otherwise, check me out on the podcast, Thinking Inside the Box.
Yes, absolutely. I'm a subscriber. I love it. I think it's a great show. You should all check that out. Julie, what about you? Where are you going to be? What's going on for you?
I've got a bit of travel coming up myself. So I'm going to be in Dallas at the end of the month, and then Chicago early in May. And I think, Pete, I'm joining you at the Payroll Congress.
Yes.
Mid to late May. We'll be doing some talk sessions there. So hope to meet some folks there as well. And we have, I'm doing some quarterly webinars. So skills and talent intelligence is the topic of a May 23rd webinar that we're doing with Dave Polachek, who's my colleague. And so a little bit more on skills and talent intelligence and actually making that tangible.
Yeah. Awesome. Yes. And Dave is a alumni of our show as well. So make sure you check him out at his podcast on analytics. That was a really good one.
How about you, Pete? Where are you headed?
Me. So next week, I am going to be on with the executives from OneSource Virtual next Wednesday, April 19th. We're doing a webinar discussion on how to maximize your investments in people and data through the payroll operation and payroll operating model. So please check that out, especially if you're a Workday user. That is one I'd love to have you join me with. And then the week following, I'm going to be at Unleash, the International Festival of HR, as it's called, in Las Vegas. I'm speaking there with my distinguished partner, Steve Goldberg. We're going to be talking about org agility. And as you know, it's not to be missed. Steve is to me the top HCM expert when it comes to that topic. And he always gives great presentations on that. And I'm just happy to be a part of it with him. So definitely do that. And if you want to jump on that, that is a private breakout. You have to be invited only. So if you want to be a part of that one, just let me know and I will get you contacted or in connection with the Unleashed team, and we'll get you in that breakout. So, and again, make sure you check out Matt. He's got a great show, got great insights. And we appreciate you coming on, Matt. Thank you so much. It's been a great conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right. Take care, Julie. Take care, Matt.
That's a wrap.